Hi everybody. I'm hoping the audio picks me up pretty well. I got a lot of stuff going on in the background, so I'm going to talk as loud as I possibly can without it being too weird, I guess. But today is the fairy can't talk. Today is the fairy tutorial that somebody asked me for, and at the beginning of the video I'm going to show some examples of some really detailed work. It's much finer work, and then my tutorial is going to be on something a lot more basic, but some of the stuff that I take for my more basic ones usually comes from reference books and things like that. Plus, if you want to buy these books for yourself, it's a good way for me to show what I use if you also want to do them, because these are some of my favorites. I'm not as detailed as some of these, but by all means, if you want to go out and get them to use them too, I highly recommend it, because it does help to have references when you need it, or you could just Google a lot of stuff. Sorry if my camera moves around a lot. It's on a tripod, so it's very new to me, so I'm just hoping that it kind of helps and that it works. But let's get started. This is Dreamscapes. I know you probably can't see all of it, so I'm going to pick up my camera a little bit. Dreamscapes, and it's by Stephanie. I'm not going to ruin that last name, but it's there. But in this book, she does a lot of watercolor work, which is why I like it. Sorry, I'm adjusting. In this book, mostly what I use for this is, if I can find it, because I didn't bookmark my pages. It shows a lot of the smaller body works, things like that. This typically goes for, it's still good for like basic work, obviously, because you can do the skinnier ones that are taller, the little tiny ones, kind of like Tinkerbell, we'll just use that as an example. Or even smaller, or you can have the ones that are, regular sized people, things like that. So this kind of helps a lot, especially with their bodies. They're a little bit more thinner, pointier, daintier, kind of like their faces and whatnot. But anyway, that's what's usually in this book. Shows like their more daintier look. This is highly detailed stuff. This is definitely more advanced stuff. This is Realm of the Fairy by Ed Org. He does massive detail work. Obviously, you can see it. Like, it's crazy. I'm definitely not to this level. I just like using it as a reference, and eventually I would like to get to the point where I can do this much detail, but it's very, very difficult. But yeah, let me go through and find. He also uses models, which is something that is shown in this book, like real life people, so it does help him a lot more. I've never personally had the chance to do that myself. But it's just the same thing as having a reference. It's something to look at that kind of gives you an idea of what you're trying to do. And like I said, his stuff is a lot more detailed and refined. Pretty sure he's a fine artist of some kind. Not really seeing a good fairy picture. His is a lot more like multiple layers of fantasy, like angels, mermaids, anything from your typical fantasy lore books and things like that. His are definitely more realistic looking. The most unrealistic one I can usually find is this one, which again, they're just a little bit more pointed in the face, still a lot of detail, but the eyes are bigger, things like that. So today for the tutorial, I'll probably just be doing super basic ones, and I'll show you what I mean when I get like started. So for me, if I'm going to do something super basic, I also need to move around again. for me, something super basic would be, like, let's say, again, Navi, which is some little bitty wings, right? And it would be around a circle. And anybody can do this. It's not hard, because Navi is one of those little characters that it's like you're not going to really mess it up. I'm sure you could, but for the most part, this is as basic as I can really think of for somebody just starting out drawing any type of fantasy character, really. Made the wings a little bit big, but if you're going for something along the lines of more like easier to do, this is basic. This is what you're going to want to do. So it's basically just a circle, and the wings can be anything you really want, because when it comes to fairies are usually nature based, so they could have butterfly wings, they could have dragonfly wings. And again, that's when you try to find a reference picture to see what those might look like. Dragonfly wings obviously have a lot of the veiny things. Don't remember what the scientific name for it's called, but they have the veins going through their wings. And then if you have other nature ones that are common are butterfly wings, so you could do any butterfly pattern that you wanted, or you could make your own. But yeah, this one I'm just doing basic little loops for the wings. I apologize for the meowing in the background. My cat wants attention, especially when I make videos. He thinks I'm talking to him, so if that gets a little annoying, I apologize. And there you go. That's a little Navi. And then, of course, for me, if you want to do something a little extra, or maybe you want to do something a little different, you could always add extra little bloop, bloop. Hi, buddy. Yeah, I know. Talking to somebody that's not you. You could add little sparkles, or if you color it, you could give it some light. Or if you wanted to change it up and be super different, you could always give it a little topper, like it's got like hair coming out, maybe doing one of those little swoopy swoops like that, if you wanted. It looks more like a sprite ball, like a spirit ball, rather than a fairy if you do that, or at least to me it does, because if I do spirits, they generally have like the super wavy hair in the top. So this is pretty basic. Pretty basic. Like, this is the most basic that you could probably get. To add on to this, you could do the same thing, but what I would do, if I wanted to give it a body, like an actual physical body, you would do a really tiny, like most of their heads are pointed, so you could make an upside down egg, make it real small, make it pointy, like that, okay? And then for me, usually when I do flying poses, it's a little bit tougher because the body is out of proportion, but it also kind of makes it easier, because since you don't really see fairies, you could cut the body pretty much in half. Like, say they're flying. I'm just going to try to sketch this out really quick, but say they have their wings out, okay? And then there's usually... hands are usually out. This is just a rough skeleton sketch to see where their hands would be, or to see where their arms would be. Be like right there. It's a little bit out of proportion, but trust me, I'll fix it. It's just a little bit tough to do on screen because I'm also working around my camera. I'm basically sitting behind it and trying to look at my sketch from the other side. Okay, so there's some arms to kind of show us where we're at. And these can obviously be a lot bigger. Like, if you're thinking more physics, the wings should be a lot bigger. But if you don't really care about that kind of thing, it's magic. It doesn't matter because it's fairies. Then you can make them as big as you want or as small as you want. As long as it makes sense to you, that's all that matters. So I'm going to do a little bit of a body. And then I'm going to pretend like they're up in the air, like this, and then that's their leg. That's their other leg. Back in the back. So it's going to look a little weird until I can flush out a little bit of it, but that's essentially what it is. This is like little hips. I guess it would actually be further off that way. I'm really bad with proportions, so you just have to give me a minute. But yeah, it'd be a little face. That's just drawing a line to see where their eyes would be at. Their hairline would probably be right about there. This is a little bit more detailed than what I was probably going to do. I can always make another one, because this one's supposed to be a lot smaller, but I ended up making it a lot bigger than what I planned on. So, but actually I could probably cut it down even more. There we go. That's a little bit better. Okay. But just throw in some little lines for some hair. Doesn't have to be perfect. Get that out of there. The face is probably going to be the hardest part if you do decide to put any lines in it, just because it's so small. But that I typically just do the eyes and nose then if you're going to do that, just because it is so tough. And then it's just a lot of erasing at this point, because you're just trying to thin everything out again. And obviously it's not going to be perfect. Fairies are always a little tough to do, because especially if you draw them really small, which I'm trying to do, but it's a little bit difficult because I didn't really preemptively practice for this. I just did it head on because I'm like, well, I just want to make sure I get this video done correctly. I'm going to erase this because I already know what's supposed to be there. It's a little hard to see. Hopefully you guys have been able to see past my hand the whole time, but and then for legs, I generally just do that's still not right. See what I mean by it's tougher to do because their perspective that I'm going for is they're kind of half bent, like they're just kind of floating there, but I'm not really getting what I thought I would out of it for like perspective wise. So this one I kind of messed up, but you know what I'm trying to go for, or at least if you've ever drawn with me before, you kind of know what I'm going for. So yeah, I'll redo this one again. The only other one I could do is, if we're going for a basic, would be, it's pretty much the same thing, but it's more of a side view, I guess. So I'm going to do even smaller this time, so I can actually do it right. It'd be, because I've drawn these before, it's just been a very long time. And when I do the skeletons like that, I know it looks kind of funky, but it's me just trying to position where things would be at. And then kind of just, flushing it out. Because fairies don't really have... They're not too big. And I don't want to make the body too big for the head, obviously. And then, of course, if yours are wearing clothes, you can obviously put clothes on them. It's hard to do perspective, of course, from this side as well, because it's... I'm not really good with doing the arms and whatnot, but you would put them somewhere in here. They'd come down. The neck's a little long. I would say that the best thing to probably do for fairies, if you're going to do them, is don't think too much about proportion, but it's really hard not to when you're really perfectiony like me. That's probably the biggest reason why they're so tough to do. Because some people want to be accurate. Me, it's half and half. It really depends on how much I really want to, make it look as best that I can. Because either way, I'm going to perfect it is just probably way too much. But yeah. And I probably made this up too high. I did. And then I'm not really sure what to do with the arms for this one. Because it's, again, they're supposed to be floating, but it's really tough to show that. And then for mine, if I wanted to hide up these terrible legs that I did, I would probably do like a little, or something, just like a little skirt or something. Because I'm not really sure how else to get it to look right, I guess, especially when it comes to bad positioning and things like that. That's really all I got. The basic do's and don'ts for fairies is, because that's what somebody asked me for. Definitely treat it as, especially if you're going to do a body, treat it like you would any other sketch. You want to do the head and the skeleton positioning as best you can before you flush everything else out. Like these were a quick sketch, but it's not the greatest. You want to take your time to still do it, even if it's really, really small, like this one, to give you, like, that's how big that one is. And that one's a lot bigger. So it's, take your time to flush it out. There's a lot of different styles of fairies. Pretty much anything, any kind of style really works for them. Like I said, they're nature-based usually, but they're, you could make anything into a fairy, basically. It's art. You can make it into a mechanical one, just anything, really. But that's all I really got. I'm kind of losing my focus, and yeah. So... thanks for watching, and hopefully I can get up a better video next time. This one was kind of a flub, but for basic do's and don'ts, that's pretty much all I got from my experience. If you want something a little bit more complex, unfortunately I don't have the time right now to do any of that. I'm hoping at some point maybe I can do a watercolor introduction, because I know some people are scared to do them or they don't like to use them because they don't know how, and so on and so forth. But yeah, just hope you guys have a good day. Thanks for watching if you do watch. Again, sorry it wasn't the best, but that's all I got. See you next time.